Welcome to episode 9 of the In the Name of Service podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Barb Thompson. Here we broadcast stories of everyday men and women who've answered the call to serve in hopes of inspiring and catalyzing the rest of us to follow suit in our own way. Today's interview is with Eric Hohman. Eric is a former combat controller, MBA, and president of the First There Foundation, a nonprofit organization with a mission to ensure current and former combat controllers know they have teammates ready to assist them when life becomes difficult. They help coordinate access to medical, mental, and substance abuse treatments and provide emergency financial assistance, career guidance, and help connect families to various support services. First There honors past, present, and future combat controllers by raising awareness of their vital contributions to armed conflicts and natural disasters throughout American history. In today's conversation, Eric takes us through his own story, highlighting some of the pain he has experienced and how those experiences have given him the insight he needs to help others today. Specifically, Eric talks about survivor's guilt, depression, suicide, and using alcohol to self-medicate. These are not uncommon for combat veterans, especially following their separation from service due to several losses occurring simultaneously, such as the loss of purpose, the loss of belonging and support, and the loss of their identity. However, if there's anything at all I want you to hear from Eric's story, I want you to hear this. Number 1, having any of these or other symptoms does not make you weak. I will say that again. Having these or any other symptoms does not make you weak. Number 2, you are not alone. I've worked with the most elite military men and women in the world, and they too struggle with all of these symptoms mentioned and more. Number 3, not reaching out and talking to someone is the easiest way for this enemy to defeat you. This enemy will whisper lies to you all day long to keep you from growing and healing. Number 4, like other enemies you've faced, you can beat this one. Do not, as Eric says, suffer in silence. Call me, call Eric, or someone you know and talk today, maybe right now. I hope this conversation gives you hope today. This episode is dedicated to Chris A.Z. Rush. For more information on the First There Foundation, combat controllers, or resources for support, please take a look at the show notes or go directly to firstthere.org, where you can buy some merchandise like cool t-shirts and hoodies that will go to support our combat controllers. Thank you for listening. All right, Eric, thank you for being with us at the In the Name of Service podcast. Start us off by telling us about yourself and your background.
Sure. Thank you for having me. First of all, before we get right into it, I'll give you the super quick Cliff Note version if your listeners know what that is. I was born in Mexico City, and, my parents were chasing the American dream. My dad left when I was a little kid, and he started working in San Antonio, Texas. He was a jeweler. A pretty talented one from what I hear. And, 2 years later, we came over and it's just kind of started living in San Antonio, Texas. Unfortunately, my dad, when he was by himself, he, got pretty heavy into alcohol. And, I'm sure being somewhat of a young man back then and being in the States without a family just kind of got a little bit out of control. So he wasn't a very good guy to my mom and us as the years went on. So, divorces and stuff, and luckily my stepdad came into the picture and adopted us, so that's why I have a German last name, even though I was born in Mexico City. It throws off people quite a bit, so
yeah.
It's kind of cool, right? They talk to me on the phone and they're like, "Oh, Mr. Hohman," and they meet me and they're like, "Who are you?" so it's good psychology right off the bat. But yeah, so grew up in San Antonio, played sports. I always wanted to be a businessman. I had no desire to join the military, and I went to Texas Tech University in Lubbock, which was not my favorite. It was, I didn't research it, back then, so I just showed I was probably the only kid with a car. Everybody were in trucks, and there were, ranchers and farmers. And I just definitely thought to myself, oh my God, what do I do? But I partied a little bit too hard. And 2 years into it, my parents said, hey, I can't afford for you to keep doing that. So you got to figure something else out. So the Air Force was running their commercials about join us for 4 years and we pay for your degree. And so I did that. I joined the Air Force. I became a security forces guy, which is a military police for people that don't know. And I scored pretty ASVAB test, which is the test you need to get in. And, my recruiter was actually pretty solid. He said, hey man, you could go fly around in a wax plane and kind of intelligence, you'll be airborne intelligence and you fly all over the world. It's awesome. And right before I said yes, he had a poster of these guys, security forces, with the beret, a blue beret, and an M16. I was like, no, I want to do that. If I'm going to join the military, I want a beret, carry a weapon. And he was looking at me like, you're an idiot. He's like, I don't think you should do that. And I was like, no, if I'm not joining, this is what I want to do. So I did. And later, I kind of regretted it, but I did have fun. So I did my 4 years. I still didn't have my degree. So I re-enlisted, and when I re-enlisted shortly after 9/11 place, and it just sparked every patriotic bone in my body, and I wanted revenge for what they did. So I was going to get out. I had my bachelor's degree in business, and the day, or a couple weeks, I should say, before I left the Air Force, I ran into a combat controller, and he goes, what are you doing? You should stay here with us. And I said, no, I want to join the Army or the Navy, because, that's all you hear about. I definitely want to go get payback. So he's like, you're an idiot. Join combat control. You get to drop bombs, you scuba dive, jump out of airplanes. you have the best equipment. And at the end of the day, when those guys are sucked up in some terrible mud hole, you're like at a hotel, you're having a good time. So I was like, oh, okay, I think I'd rather do that. So yeah, that was kind of my spark into combat control. And, it's a long pipeline. I think out of the 20 guys I started with, only 4 of us became combat controllers. And shortly after it was off to deploying and going to war, so it was pretty quick.
Yeah, I was going to say that initial description is fairly motivating, but the pipeline is so long that something a little deeper had to keep you motivated all that time.
Well, I think he said a couple other things. He's like, you get to stay in the best hotels, the best gear, and a ton of women follow you. They'll love you if you have one of these scarlet berets. So I said, okay, yeah, let's do that. So that was my other motivation, to be completely honest with you. Yeah, I was like, why not?
It got you through.
Yes, definitely. It was a rough one for sure. My pipeline, the first school, they just smoke you, to see if you have the intestinal fortitude to make it through. It's rough. And then you go to airborne school, survival school, which those are kind of run by other cadre, other instructors, not combat control instructors. So it's a little bit easier. You're not getting smoked this much. Mm-hmm. But as soon as you get to air traffic control school, it's 4 months of, just getting destroyed. You're up by like 4 o'clock in the morning. You're picking up your room, make sure it's up to standard, inspection standard. And then you go downstairs, you PT for about an hour and a half, I think it was, or close to 2 hours. Well, sometimes it was 2 hours because we messed up, and they just kept us there. Just if we had class at 9, they kept us till like 8:55, and then we had 5 minutes to change and not be late to class because we were late. We'd get smoked again. So we were just, drenched in sweat, changing into uniforms, running to class, and then just trying to learn air traffic control school. It was such a rough school. But yeah, so then after that, you go to then you go to combat control school, and that's another 4 months of your life or so that you get destroyed. But it was pretty wild. It was the best time of my life for sure.
Yeah. Do you feel like it prepared you for what was coming?
I think so. Oh, well, absolutely. Yeah. I can't say I think so. Yes, absolutely. When I finally did leave the teams in 2013, I think like most operators get out and say, well, I had a degree, I operated and I was one of the best. And civilian world is completely different. It's, I think, more painful and more difficult than any mission, than anything did, because in the military, everything's laid out for you, right? You're like, okay, if you're going to train, you're going to do this, you get this. Or if you want to study and you want to become higher in rank, then you got to do this. If you're going to combat and you're doing a capture kill, or you're going after someone, you have a plan. Everything's pretty much laid out. Some of those plans obviously get changed around, but
right.
you have a path. And the civilian world, I mean, it's no one really, I mean, your family and friends care about what you did and medals on your chest and all that stuff, but the regular civilians, or I mean, for one, unfortunately, combat control is not well known,
right?
And so you get out and people are just like, okay, well, thank you for your service. what experience do you have running a multi-million-dollar budget?
How is that going to help me?
How are we going to take a chance on you running hiring you on a mid-level management, for a business? So it was a very rude awakening, and but you gotta just keep chipping at it. You gotta stay in the fight, and you gotta just keep moving forward. So I did. Combat control definitely helped.
What stands out now as having been your most meaningful experience in the military?
I had some really good ones. The most meaningful thing, I think, was just being around. I don't miss the circus. I miss the clowns. It was being around. I miss the guys, because it was. Yeah. I tell people, because I liked war, and people ask me like, "Oh my God, war's so terrible," blah blah blah. It's like, yeah, but we're a little bit different, By the time we get to war, we've been 2 years, or at least 3 years almost, of being desensitized to about what you do. You're training for it, and you're just ready to go, and it's. I tell people, imagine you being with your best friends in college or high school, whatever, your best friends that you grew up with, and then you're sent over and you have the greatest weaponry around. And then for me, I had jets and helicopters and bombers above me. So, and then we're just going to go after guys, So it was like the funnest time that you could imagine. The thing that got, so that being around those guys, and, it was really, and keeping them, when I joined any team, whether it was an Army team or whatever, SEAL team, well, it didn't matter. My main purpose, I always wanted to keep those guys alive. I said, no matter what happens, I will do whatever it takes to make sure we all come back, because that is my job as the controller. And, and I did, but as much as I loved war and everything, as I started losing my friends, all my friends have been to an insider attack. As I lost them, it just, the survivor's guilt really started getting to me. Even though I wasn't there, it just really, really started messing with me, and on my last deployment, I was with an ODA, with the Army Special Forces team, and I just left. I just got ripped out, so I left, and I believe it's like 2 weeks later, coming up here in March. Yeah. It was an insider attack, and my team was wounded, and my team leader and I replaced the team leader and the controller on that team because injured in IED. They ran over an IED and got pretty banged up. So my team leader Andrew and I joined that team to fill in, and then I leave, and then 2 weeks later this attack happens, and Andrew catches one in the head, and he's killed. So I was in San Antonio visiting, after that deployment, and my commander calls, and he's like, "Hey man, I had some bad news. I think most of your ODA is dead, and your team leader is definitely dead." And it just, it was just heartbreaking. I mean, I bawled, for like 2 days, because he was 28 years old at the time. He was such a good dude, right? And being his first hand, and it just really, it took the wind out of me, because the rules of engagement were so terrible. It was we couldn't shoot right away. For me to drop a bomb, we had to get permission from some guy up in DC, because the collateral damage of a bomb. I mean, it was, so meanwhile, while we're waiting on this permission to drop, or to fight.
Engage, yeah.
Yeah, we're waiting. So meanwhile, we're still taking fire, and the enemy, I mean, it's funny how they just know, right? They start to realize that our rules of engagement are different. And, after Andrew was killed, my shoulder was pretty torn up, and I went to my commanders. Actually, probably 3 days after he told me, I drove back to Florida and I said, hey man, send me back. I want to go back to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I know there's a controller there, and I'll just be a shooter. I just want to be a shooter. I don't care about controlling aircraft. He did me a solid. He said, you're going to commit war crimes, and I don't want your life to be destroyed for something stupid like that. I'm not sending you back. Get your shoulder fixed. And then I was going to go assess for a tier 1 team, the 2-4 squadron. And since he didn't send me back, I was pretty upset, and I said, well, and I'm out of the Air Force. I'm going to get my shoulder fixed, and I'm done with this. We're not protecting the guys. And I mean, what is it all for? Handing out soccer balls. That's not the soft mission. It's send these actors or the Red Cross to do that. My job wasn't to do that. So yeah, I definitely have conviction. I left.
Yeah. And
So,
you experienced, it sounds extremely, extremely tough. I mean, you're heartbroken and feeling disillusioned even about the importance of the mission you held so dear. So tell us about your transition from the military. What was that like for you?
So I thought it was going to be super easy. I had a business degree, couple deployments, and I like to consider me a pretty smart guy. So I said, okay, I'm just going to take over the world with
no big
being
deal.
An operator and a bachelor's degree. Yeah,
here we go.
Like, how hard could this be? But it was very tough. I think I did what most guys do. I did a contracting gig right off the bat, and I hated it. I was back in Afghanistan, no weapon. There were some operators or prior operators there, but it's not the same. And as soon as I got done with that rotation, I never went back. And then just trying to find a job was super terrible. Luckily, the aunt of Andrew, she's a lobbyist down here in Austin, Texas, and she said, "Hey, you were there with my nephew.
Yes,
I want to try to get you this gig at the Texas Senate, working for a senator, you'll be a policy advisor." So I said, "Okay." I loved it. I loved being in the suit and tie.
Yeah.
And kind of just dealing with the whole policy stuff, right? And I really fell in love with politics and the way it all worked. And sometimes I was there and look at these politicians. I was like, how is this moron in charge of people? It just really kind of gave me that curiosity. But unfortunately, in Texas, it doesn't run year round. It's every other year from January to June.
Okay.
So I joined in March, so I only had a few months, and then they called me in. They're like, "Okay, well, thanks a lot. Good luck." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "Yeah, it's over. There's no more." So that was heartbreaking. And then that was a good 6 to 8 months out, and later I was lucky. I found another job as a corporate security manager working for a pretty big company, which I loved. Again, another suit and tie job. That's my jam. I think the survivor's guilt really started creeping up. When you first get out of the military, you'll get assessed, and to PTSD, your body. They give you like a rating. So
right.
When it came to the mental health, I said, "Nah, good." I knew what I was going to do. Nothing affected me. I was good to go. So a year later, when I'm going through this, I started having thoughts of suicide, which is something I've never thought of before ever in my life.
Right.
I wanted to run my car off a bridge, or there was times that I definitely thought about putting a gun to my head, and I would sit there and I was like, man, there's something wrong with me. I don't know why I'm thinking that. That's just not normal for me.
Right.
And luckily, the VA does a second assessment after you've been out, and this psych doc, he was a pretty good guy, and he kind of really, I guess, saw past they give you this sheet that says, how have you been feeling the last 2 weeks? You be sad. So all my sheet was like, oh, I'm thrilled, I'm happy. And he said, hey man, he goes, hey man, you're lying to me. He said other words, but
right.
You're lying to me, and you're wasting my time. So why don't we get down to it? So it took some convincing, and he goes, hey, you're heavily depressed, your loss of purpose, and you're miserable, and depression now. I mean, I knew that meant you're sad. At least that's how I thought about it,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
He goes, it happens to everybody. And I said, no, it doesn't happen to dudes like me,
Right.
I'm an operator. And I said, that happens to like some fat dude watching Dr. Phil eating chocolates. That's not me. And he said, no, you're heavily depressed. So yeah, luckily that doc, he did his job and got me some meds for a while, for about 8 months, and had to see him twice a week. But, my goal was I wanted help. I wanted to feel whole again.
Right.
I just
yes.
I wanted to, I just didn't want to be a victim of that. I hated that I can control my own mind.
Right.
And it was my transition was very rough. And luckily I had, God and some really friends that kind of recognized that I was in a bad spot. Mm-hmm. And, I was Monday through Friday, I was completely good to go because I was going to work. I had a pretty big responsibility at work, but on the weekends I would just pretty much drink till I blacked out, and I just couldn't figure out why I did it.
Yeah.
And it was, it took a long, I've been out for 10 years now, and I can say that the last 2.5, 3 years I've been where I'm flying level, where I'm whole, where I'm just like, okay, I'm good. It was really, luckily Andrew was looking out for me, even though he was killed. His mom started up a charity called APK Charities, and it's in his honor. And they reached out to me I reached out to them after Andrew was killed, and I was like the first team guy that was with him, because the rest of his team was, either in Walter Reed getting repaired or still in Afghanistan.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So she said, hey, you're obviously hurting. And they kind of just adopted me a little bit, as far as on the organizational side.
Right.
And then fast forward to 2020, the SF Charitable Trust had an event where they were giving away a car. And I happened to win this car, and everybody's like, oh, great, what group are you in? And I said, man, I'm a combat controller. I'm not a Green Beret. So they were kind of ticked off, all these Green Berets. And
this guy gets the car, controller. Come on.
Yeah, there's like, damn Air Force, But it sparked something into the foundation, and what I wanted to do. But
yeah, tell us about
it's funny how life works.
It is, right? Twisted and winding, and you just never know. Tell us the history. You're getting us there right now, but tell us about First There.
Yeah. So I won this car, and after this, I contacted the current guys that have the combat control guys, and I said, hey, we need to do something like this. We need to raise money, and a bunch of guys, and we should do this. They wanted to go their own different, or they had a different view on some of the things that I wanted to do, and they said, thing. So I said, all right. And I was going to run for Congress. Well, I was running for Congress. So I said, okay, well, at least I tried, and figure it out. And then shortly after, a buddy of mine called me, and he was kind of in the same boat, and he had a gun to his head, and luckily his wife stopped him, and he was getting help. And I woke up that night, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to start my own foundation, and I'm pretty sure I can handle running for Congress, and started First There. And what drove me to do that was not only my buddy calling me that night, but also my friend Chris Rush, who was my first supervisor as a combat controller. He did all these amazing things.
Yes.
6 months after leaving teams, he puts a gun to his chest, and he's on. So that just kind of sparked that fire to, okay, well, it's up to me. The Air Force, unfortunately, I don't know why their PR doesn't do more for combat controllers. We've been around since 1953, and you never hear about us. They always come up with these different names of, what was it, in the 80s was like Air Commandos, then Special Tactics, Battlefield Airmen,
right.
Special Warfare now. It just drives me insane.
And it's a very small community to begin with when you compare it to, forces like Army Special Forces or other career fields.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to, I feel like it's like what we're doing now. Everybody gets a medal, right? But those other guys that are in our pool didn't go through 2 years of getting your life destroyed. The pararescuemen and combat controllers did. So to me, that's where you got to advertise, because you need people like that to continue to fight future wars or be ready. But they don't. So I don't know. Maybe one day I'll run into an Air Force PR person and ask them that question. But for now,
well, tell us what First There means.
It's up to me.
Yeah, for sure. That's the feeling you felt. That's what sparked it all. Yeah. What does First There mean?
And that's our motto. The combat control motto is First There, because we do jump in contrary to popular belief, we're actually the first ones in because we got to be able to secure airfield or landing strips to bring in resources, whether it's more forces or land aircraft or whatever it is. We're combat controllers are one of the first on the ground for sure in any major operation, or even covert operations. So I figured I wanted to be an extension of the team room for my guys and let them know that when they're struggling, they don't have to kind of flounder around, because there's, God bless the people that have all these different veteran organizations. I mean, I'm sure there's probably hundreds of them in the United States, and the problem is that I went to one of them when I got out and I said, well, I'm a combat controller. And again, people just, what is that? And I would tell them I was the Air Force and what I did. And they didn't believe me. So it was more annoying. And then it's trust. If guys don't trust the person they're talking to, they're not going to open up about anything, especially if you got to explain to them what you've been doing in the military, and so I got to the point where I was just like, just Google it and they'll tell you everything about me. I'm just, it was very...
it becomes exhausting trying to...
Sure.
Yeah, explain away. What have you learned
Especially
about...
everything we do.
Exactly. What have you learned about supporting other combat controllers since the inception of First There?
It's been really good. My first year, this was 22. I first wanted to make sure that I had traction with the guys. What I was doing, guys were going to buy into it and say, okay, this is good. I like what this guy's doing. And because if they didn't, I can tell you that I wouldn't have lasted too long.
Oh, no.
Would have been,
no.
Yeah, they would have been like, get out of here, dude.
Yeah.
It's been really good. Some good lessons learned. I think people, as you have a nonprofit, there's people out there that think you have $1 million in the bank right away, so then they want you to pay for everything, and that's not the way it works.
Sure.
And I said that at our gala. I said, hey, it's up to us, and we all have to have a stake in this, because one day it might not be you, but it might be your teammate or someone you love that needs help. And we're not a piggy bank. You just can't do that. We just can't just fork out cash. Especially, I'm entrusted by donors and people that are donating money to us, sponsors, to really take care of this and make it go to a purpose that's going to have a good ROI. Again, if guys are not willing to help themselves, I mean, we can send them a treatment and try to get them help. But if they're truly not in a place where they want to help themselves, you're wasting time and money, and it's sad because... By
helping themselves, you mean are they ready to commit to treatment, or is that what you mean?
Yeah. As an operator, I think sometimes guys have forgotten. It's like, man, I was one of the baddest men on this earth, and now I'm this guy. But everybody needs help at some time or the other, but it's up to you to also continue to push yourself to get that help and get better.
Yeah. Well, you guys are...
It's tough.
It's so tough, and it's so complex, and it looks different for every single person. But what you're offering in the form of a supportive relationship has no price tag. I will tell you that. So if there's anything you can do in your relationship, it's normalizing the experience that you've had, that you came to that point where, you also had those thoughts of suicide, and you had to fight for that warrior mindset that says, okay, now this is the enemy, and now we're going against this. So that relationship, there's just no price tag on it. I know there's a lot of things that you do need money for, but how do you see First There growing in the future, and how can people get involved or contribute in some way?
Sure. Well, this year, so 23, now that we have the good traction of the team guy and they trust me, now we're expanding where we're putting out the message to civilians or people that have never heard about combat control. So my mission is take care of the guys, take care of our families, and is to educate the public about combat control.
Yeah.
So that's it. The message still, it's shifted a little bit to where we're putting it out there more to expose ourselves to what we've done. And, I tell the guys it's podcasts, and talking about it, because it's up to us to tell the story. And now people don't even talk about Afghanistan, and you have guys that fought for 21 plus years over there.
Right.
And their stories where for us, it's normal deployment, but for a civilian to hear, oh yeah, I was shooting and moving with an ODA or with a SEAL team, and I was calling in an aircraft, bombs or ordnance, and I was calling in medevacs, and I was fighting meters away from these guys. And they're just like, that way you had aircraft over. I mean, it blows people's minds that we do that. But if we don't tell the story, it's going to die with us, and 10 more years, I mean, all these guys are going to be in their 50s and 60s, and people are going to be like, oh, sure you did, Pops. Get out of here. So we're telling the story. We're trying to get more exposure, and I've been lucky. I've had some, like I said, some really good friends that want to help combat control and First There, and people like you, that just reach out and say, hey, I saw you were you ran
people
for
have to hear about this.
Crazy. Yeah. So I've been lucky, thank God, and it's just good people to help out, and that just kind of works. That windy road that's in front of you. You just got to stay at it, keep chipping away at it, and you got to believe that it's going to work. And sometimes it comes pretty quick, and sometimes it doesn't. But you just got to stay on course. So First There, I wanted to continue to grow. We have our second gala, 9th September. Every gala is on the weekend of 9/11 because that's an important day in our history, and I don't want people to forget. And that's the reason why a lot of us became combat controllers to go to war. So it's growing really well. And right now I'm working on a pilot program with a pretty big company that we're going to be able to start hiring soft guys and take them out of that constant rotation to a foreign country to be contractors, where they can stay here, get a degree, and then get them in the corporate world where they can stay home and be home with their families, and then learn a skill that it'll transfer over to, even if they don't stay with us, they can go find another mid-level to senior level job. So I'm pumped about that. It's all the pieces are falling into place.
That's really exciting. So should people go to your website to find out more information, or how should they find you?
Well, it's rolling out. It literally just this last Friday, so it's in the pilot program. I'm the
TBD.
Pig. They're going to see how I do first. So I have a lot of pressure to make sure that I surprise and exceed all standards with the CEO and the company. And
awesome.
And as we move on, then he's going to say, okay, you're kind of in charge of this, and start bringing in some of your guys because operators, we're just so driven, self-sufficient,
right?
And most of them are all about the team. It's team first.
Yes.
Let's get the mission done and let's work. So it's a very great skill that's untapped, I think. So
in addition to your military service and First There, you recently ran for Congress. Like how, and now we hear about this pilot program. How do you stay motivated to serve?
Well, Congress was I couldn't stand what happened to our country, right? The border. And like I said, I was born in Mexico City, and I'm all about people chasing their dreams, but you got to do it the right way. And I think politics, unfortunately, becomes and just seeing it firsthand, it's such a dirty business where it's just, it's for clicks and it's for likes. So they're willing to almost risk the safety of this country for them to get elected, or just blatantly lie about things that are going on. And so, that's why I ran. I had a pretty cushy job in Austin, Texas. I was working as a management analyst for the Health and HHSC, which is Human Health Services Commission. And but I kept seeing what was going on, and I said, nope, I got to get in there. I can still fight, maybe not with a rifle, but with a pen, and I ran for Congress.
Yeah.
That's how you become great. You got to throw yourself out there. It was a wild ride. I don't know if I'll do it again, but I might. I hate losing. There's 7 candidates, and I did pretty good for brand new out of nowhere. But
I was going to say, that's so encouraging, because there's people out there, Eric, who are like, they have this thought in the back of their head, but they're like, no, I don't have the pedigree, I don't have the background, I could never do that. And you're like, no, you could do it. Just go ahead, try.
Yeah, you just got to throw yourself out there. There's a lot of things that, if anybody runs, the consultant group was, they were like, okay, well, you got to wear a cowboy hat and cowboy boots. And I said, no,
oh boy,
I don't do that, man. I'll wear cargo pants. Yeah, I'll wear Merrills. And if you want me out, walking around, and want Merrills and some cargo pants, because that's where I'm comfortable. I hate jeans, and I'm definitely not wearing a cowboy hat, but there's little things like that try to change you, right, for the image. And I fought back on most of that stuff. There was a couple of things that I agreed to that if I ever do it again, I'm just like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say. But it was my first go, and I hate losing, so I definitely might do it again, but I think I'm going to take care of myself and my teammates, and I'll expand further out. But yeah, it was a good experience. I would tell guys listening, you got to get comfortable in the suit, though. These guys. Like I told you earlier, I'm a suit and tie guy, and you're no longer fighting. You're never going back there anymore. You either evolve or you perish. And if you want to be a lumberjack, then great. Grow the longest beard you can. But if you want to get in the corporate world, you're going to have to get a haircut, or at least trim your beard, right? Where you don't look like a scary person that people in the HR are going to be like, there's nowhere we're hiring this guy. So it's just those little things that guys are slowly, and that's another hard lesson. You identify with your identity of going
right.
I feel for some of these guys, I think, because they don't want to let go of that, and it's going to be a hard transition for sure.
Well, we could go in 1,000 different directions, but it's so true about identity. It's not what you're wearing on the outside, right? It is all of the things that you've done, the hard work you've put in, and the experiences you've had with your brothers that create your identity, and that never goes away. Doesn't matter if you have a beard or not. So what?
Yeah, absolutely.
What advice do you have for others who they might feel this call to serve in one way or another, but they just are lost when it comes to how or where to get started?
Well, luckily, I think there's so many programs out there, and there's so many people talking about their struggles that you can find refuge in that. That you're not alone, and saying, okay, why am I having these problems, or why am I thinking about suicide, or why am I hitting the bottle, or whatever it may be. And if you want to serve, it's a very difficult thing, and I think you have to heal yourself first a little bit, and then come up with, okay, how can I do better for either my community or help. And I think serving others is get through something, and then you'll recognize when your teammates are hurting, and you can pull them aside and say, hey man, I know that you're hurting somehow. There's no need for you to suffer in silence, and tell your story. Tell how you've surpassed that, how you've overcome some of those things. And it's the little things, the little things that matter. And,
right.
And that's what I started doing. I just started talking about it.
Yeah.
And colors were I think most of them are very humble and never really want to talk about their experience or what they're feeling. But then we just get stuck in this box, and we suffer in silence. And then by the time you realize it, you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, and guys are just really struggling. So start small, start looking after yourselves and your family. And if you need help, you can always reach out to us. And, it's that's how it starts, and as you get broader where you want to serve your community, then that'll come with time. But I think you have to take care of yourself first, and, not be afraid to say, hey, there's something wrong with me. And that, I think that stigma is going away to some degree, but it's still out there. But mental health is definitely key to healing up and having a smoother transition, and also having the willingness to say, okay, I'm not going to let this depression or whatever it is overcome, take advantage of me or succeed where I'm going to put a gun to my head. You got to it's a fight. It's probably the toughest fight they'll be in. But you gotta, I mean, we're made different, so you gotta just keep chipping away at it and keep fighting.
Thank you. I love that answer.
Sure.
Nothing to add. Eric, I've taken up plenty of your time today. I just want to thank you for your time today, your service, and what you are doing in the service of others. And I'll link.
That was my honor. It really is.
Good. Well, I'll have some links in the show notes for people if they want to either get in contact with you or find out more about First There. Thanks, Eric.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you so much.